financial problems, elder law, tax problems, business matters, divorce, personal injury, bankruptcy, your life, your reality. Life is complicated. There is the law and there is reality. Welcome to Law and Reality, sponsored by Thav Gross. Now here's your host, Ken Gross.
Welcome to Law and Reality. This segment, I want to cover catching the scammers and the tax offering compromise. Good morning, Jenny Lingle.
Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, David Einstein.
Always a pleasure.
All right. People have been calling us and asking us to cover issues dealing with debt collectors and scammers. And today, we have with us special guest attorney Ian Linklip from Linklip and Associates. He's a consumer advocate, a lawyer, takes on credit agencies, debt collectors. He's a nationally recognized speaker on credit reporting and debt collection issues. He focuses on key areas. This week, we're going to talk about collection abuses and robo-dialing, something we all experience. Next week, we're going to talk about credit reporting errors and background checks. These areas have a lot of substance and a lot of information to convey. The next two segments, this show, our next show, we're going to kind of scratch the surface, and then over time, we're going to dig more deeply into it.
And a lot of abuse, too.
And a lot of abuse. So with that, Ian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
All right, so give me a kind of give me a rundown. What kind of problems do you guys solve? What do you attack and do you address? I know you're an aggressive, good attorney, because I've worked with you on many cases. Give me the overview.
We are a litigation firm. It means we sue debt collectors, we sue credit reporting agencies, and we're the last stop when consumers can no longer handle a problem with a debt collector or a credit reporting agency on their own. They've tried everything that they can. They've exercised all of their self-help rights under the federal statutes, or they've just run up against a brick wall and they don't know what to do. So at that point, we jump in and we commence litigation. We sue them. And we sue until they stop and they start complying with the law and they leave the consumers alone, or do what they're supposed to.
In the area of collection abuses, give me examples. What are collection abuses that would be something that you would get involved into helping people? Because people get calls, they get harassed. What's the range of those things that happen?
Well, certainly those are right at the tip. Some of the most prevalent things that we see that debt collectors are doing these days, for mainstream debt collectors, for credit card debts that you would see falling into the hands of a collection agency. We see mishandling of credit data. So we will see debt collectors that take old debt, very old debt that can't be sued on, debt that can't be credit reported, and they do what we call re-age it. They will take that debt and they'll slap a new date of delinquency on it so that it stays on a credit report longer. They may misreport the status of a debt if there's been a settlement. If you previously paid a debt, this debt may be recycled and somebody may be coming knocking on your door looking to collect the entire amount. We also see that regularly debt collectors are reaching out and they are contacting third parties like friends, neighbors, relatives, trying to shame consumers into paying debts that they may not even owe.
So does it kind of break into like two segments where on one, and David and Jenny, I know we see this too in here, where they're directly harassing the person or calling people, but it's also if they put something into a credit report that shouldn't be there. Both of those things are actionable?
Yeah, and on the harassment side, usually when you say harassment, it can fall into a variety of buckets. So harassment can be something like ringing somebody's phone off the hook, just calling them 5, 10, 15 times a day. That can be a form of harassment. Another form of harassment can be swearing at people, threatening them illegally, threatening them with virtually anything, threatening arrest, threatening garnishment, threatening a lawsuit that the debt collector doesn't intend. That's harassment.
So that's happening to someone. What do they do? If they don't have a recording of it, should they still call you? Is there still something that can be done? From a practical standpoint, the guy calls, he's nasty, he's threatening, he says, I'm going to tell your employer you're going to lose your job, and then he hangs up. How do they know? How do they go after that person?
Well, how we would go after that debt collector. Well, first thing is, everybody thinks, oh, well, it would be my word against the debt collectors. I can never win in court. Well, people win those kinds of suits all the time. Your word is as good as their word. And more importantly, consumers, if they're getting those kinds of calls, if they don't have a tape recording, if they don't have a voicemail message, one of the things that they can do, the first thing that I would tell them to do is start making a phone log. Right when this is happening, when somebody's threatening you or being unkind or reaching out and trying to tell you things about your debt that aren't true, write down what they're saying. You're perfectly entitled to do that. Put a date and a time on it, and ask them not to call.
What I tell our clients, what Jenny and I do, and Ken as well, I tell them to keep the logs, and I also say, for example, ask the person their name, who they are, where they're from, if they have a phone number or an extension. And you'll be surprised. Sometimes they'll give you information, sometimes they won't. And the other thing I wanted to say is, aren't there really two buckets for these debt collectors? One's where they, like Ken and you have indicated, when they know that they're violating, when they're threatening and they know that's wrong. And then there's others when they just get bad data from the underlying lender, the underlying creditor. They may not even know that it's old data.
Well,
if they have bad data, is it still actionable?
It absolutely is, because at some point somebody knows it's bad data. So
Right.
I want to draw a distinction between the company that is buying this and is setting up a debt collector in an office to make a phone call to you, and the debt collector who's on the line with you. The debt collector who's on the line with the consumer is somebody who's there and they're reading their screen, and they may or may not know what is behind this debt, how old it actually is. They've only got the information that's on their screen. However, their bosses, the people who buy these debts, they know, because the price that they pay to purchase these debts depends on the quality of the debts. So, you can go on the open market today as a debt buyer, and you can buy bankruptcy discharge debt that's perfectly uncollectible, illegal to collect.
And then they go and they try and collect it.
And they'll try and collect it anyway, or they can buy identity theft debt. You can buy debt of any quality, age, or size.
Or no quality, for that matter.
Exactly.
And are you able to get discovery and find that out?
Yeah, we can find that out in the process. Absolutely.
We're coming up to a break. When we come back from the break, I want to talk about robocalling as well, and then also what the method people should use to prepare and to actually proceed to try and get a remedy on this case.
Sure.
Because there is remedies. You don't have to pay attorney fees. You can collect attorney fees. We'll cover that right after the break.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP. It's devastating, the effects of debt and foreclosure on you and your family. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem. Some fear the word bankruptcy, but in reality, it's a strategy to save your home and to eliminate debt. If you're in financial trouble, timing is critical. You need to take action now. We've been saving homes and eliminating debt for over 33 years.
Call Fav Gross, 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your savings, and more. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Samasco Law wants you to know that laws are changing. Today, the average cost of nursing home care is $85,000 a year. With proper planning, we can help protect your life savings and get you the Medicaid nursing home benefits you deserve.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Fav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Fav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Fav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
All right, welcome back. All right, so on the collection issues, it's fair to say that that's the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act that governs that issue of collectors?
Yeah,
and as well as Michigan's Collection Practices Act?
Michigan has a statute too, so these two statutes provide all the protection that you're going to have here in the state of Michigan.
Okay, now what about robo-dialing? Is there something called the Telephone Consumers Protection Act?
There is, and it is commonly known as the junk fax statute, but it also has some important protections for consumers when they're getting called on their cell phones. The statute actually prohibits anyone from making a call to a cell phone using an auto dialer or a pre-recorded message unless there's prior consent.
I get those all the time.
Well, come see me.
So how do I?
actually.
So if I just all I can really keep is the phone number. What's weird to me is I always push yes because I want to talk to them because I want to start arguing with them if I have time for calling me.
Well, you
and
don't
they never answer.
You
though.
don't think you've given consent, but people, I guess you would find, have in the past given consent but not really known. So what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing about consent. If the call is being initiated by a bank or a debt collector, if you've given your cell phone number in the course of applying for credit, that's consent. You've given them consent to call you. On the other hand, many of the debt collectors are calling on cell phones after they've done what we call skip tracing. And what that means is that the consumer may have changed their telephone number, they may have lost their telephone number because they couldn't keep it for some reason, and the debt collector will have to then go out and find the consumer. They got to find a new number, and they find that new number, and now they're calling the new number. There's no consent for those calls, and if that's happening, that's an important point for the consumer to start recording.
I'm usually getting called by a company that's saying they can they can lower your interest rate on your credit card debt.
Yeah, credit card services. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
And they don't even exist. No, it's not a debt collection call. But I never even. They call me, and I never even get to talk to them. I don't understand what even going on there. If I do talk to them, I'm awfully nasty. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about those is you get on the call with those people, and I pressed yes to talk to the agents on those too, and you want to talk to these agents, and as soon as you start asking them who they are, where they are,
they hang up on you.
Click,
right,
and they're gone. So that's
in your case. If you say hello, this is Ian, they probably hang up the phone right off the bat.
They've got my name and my picture on the wall.
So, what kind of damages can you recover on a robocall case?
Well, if you've told the debt collector or the bank to not call, that's a willful violation of the statute if they keep calling, and those cases can settle for $1,500 a call. It can get very substantial, and I mean we've seen cases all around the country where people have had hundreds or literally thousands of calls initiated to their cell phone, because when the debt collectors and the banks set these things up, they have the option in what we call their calling campaigns of identifying the number of times that they want these calls to be initiated.
So they know right off the bat what they're going to do to
They
you.
know exactly how many times a day they're going to call you and when they're going to call you. And they can set this up to call you 10, 15, 20 times a day if you're not picking up.
What about robocalling to your house phone? Is that governed as well, or is that different?
It's a different standard because on a landline, what you're looking at is you have something that's going to protect you there called the Do Not Call Registry. People who do not want to get calls from auto dialers should absolutely get onto the Do Not Call Registry, and all they have to do is type into Google.
And then are there penalties that are actionable that are worth pursuing for violations of the Do Not Call list?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same remedy. It's $500 per violation, or $1,500 if it's a willful violation.
So
Now, is that just debt collectors, or is that any of the robocalls that are going out?
Right. So for the landlines, it is not going to be debt collectors or banks or people that you're doing business with. The standards are different. So for a cell phone carrier, what they're calling your cell phone, the only people who can call you on an auto dialer without your consent are emergency services. If it's the government calling, 911 calling, say get out of your house, we have a tornado coming to your neighborhood. When it comes to landline, that standard doesn't apply, and so what it is it's now solicitation. People that you have a pre-existing business relationship with, they are allowed to call you, but you can withdraw your consent for those. So you can withdraw your consent for those calls, but still the pre-existing business relationship is going to be the thing that is now the standard. So they can make commercial calls with that relationship.
We're going to need to dig in a lot deeper on this because it's fascinating. But is it fair to say on all these claims, attorney fees are recoverable against them? So when a client comes to you, they don't have to pay an attorney fee to you. Is that a fair statement? Or?
Not under the TCPA. So the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act that we were talking about earlier, that has a fee shifting provision, and that does not necessarily apply to the TCPA. So if we have a debt collector that's calling you and using an auto dialer and they don't have consent, we can bring both of those claims and get those fees recovered. If it's a solicitation to the home, it may be a different story, and the attorney may be working on a contingency basis.
Right. Here's the thing I want people to know. If you go to our website, lawandreality.com or thavgross.com, and in the area of law for debt collectors, if you click on that, it'll send a link requesting you to talk to Ian or someone from his office. So go there, click on it, and then if you're being victimized by this type of behavior, you've got a remedy and someone to talk to. Next session, we're going to talk about a couple more issues that you deal with on a regular basis. But now I want to switch over to Jenny, and I want to talk about some tax talk. We've got taxes are coming due. April 18th this year is the filing deadline. And we're going to go through a couple questions, but the first one is, why is it important, even if you can't pay your tax by April 15th, why is it important that you still file that return?
Because you don't want to be assessed the failure to file penalty, which can be as much as 25% of the unpaid tax plus interest.
So if you haven't paid the tax, there's a penalty for failing to pay, which is about 0.5% per month up to 25%, so it's a long stretch. But you get slammed if you don't file the return on time, because it's 5% per month up to 25%. So bang, right off the bat, you're wasting 25%. Bottom line, always file the return on time. We come back, we got more questions for Jenny.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Thav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Thav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you're approaching retirement and don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your investments, and your savings. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Putting a solid strategy in place with Simasco Law legally protects your assets as well as your wishes. Since a will doesn't cover you medically or financially, Simasco Law goes beyond ordinary asset management protection to safeguard everything you have.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Simasco Law today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. It's devastating. The effects of debt and foreclosure on you and your family. There is a solution.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem. Some fear the word bankruptcy, but in reality, it's a strategy to save your home and to eliminate debt. If you're in financial trouble, timing is critical. You need to take action now. We've been saving homes and eliminating debt for over 33 years.
Call Fav Gross 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. All right, Jenny, I want to come to you now on the offer and compromise, but before I do that, let me do announcements. All right, first of all, I want to remind people that we're on the radio Tuesdays noon to 1 and 6 to 7 on WCHB 1200 AM 99.9 FM with Mildred Gaddis. We're having a great time on that show. And also Saturday mornings 9 to 10 a.m. Law and Reality Live, Your Reality. That's on WDFN 1130 a.m. We have a seminar coming up. It is on Wednesday, April 13th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at our offices in Bingham Farms. It's called Go Away, Mr. Debt-Man. That topic was created by me, naturally. It's focusing on...
How many of the topics of the seminar have not been created by you?
We're working at 100% created by me. So if you like the name of the seminars, I get credit for it. If you don't like the name of the seminars, I get credit for it.
All right, just want to make
It
sure.
focuses on how to preserve future income for you and your family. The focus isn't as much on eliminating debt as it is on preserving future income for you and your family, so that when you get to 65, 70, you're not dependent only on Social Security. You need to look long-term at your finances. The government, not the government, but the banking industry wants your 29% interest over 20 years. They're depending on it. It's up to you to stop that. We're the agent to help you stop that. You got 3 reports, free reports on our website. Business Formation, Loans and Grants for Small Businesses in Detroit and Michigan. This is a report we compiled that has 14 programs where you can get assistance if you're starting a new business in the metropolitan Detroit area. I can tell you this much, it's the only report that has all programs put together into one, because we went and did the raw research to compile it. We have a Retiree's Guide for Social Security from Pat Samasco, and we also have my report on how to save your home using Regulation X as the hidden secrets. All 3 reports are free on the website. Just go to them and you can download them for free. Now, Jenny, offers and compromise. This is the other thing. Every commercial on TV and on the radio is settle your tax debt for pennies on the dollars. And this is the offer and compromise program, right?
That's correct.
All right, I have some questions. Is the amount you offer a negotiation with the IRS? Do you call them up and say, I'll give you 20, and they come back and say, oh no, we want 20,000? How's that work?
Absolutely not. It's not a negotiation in the typical fashion. You have to fill out forms that are similar to tax returns. You have to submit them, and then it's a math calculation similar to how your tax return is calculated as to whether or not you qualify.
In quick order, how is it calculated? What's the formula that is used to determine how much you have to offer?
The first thing we look at is all assets, any equity in your home. We look at equity in a 401k, stocks, bonds, life insurance with a cash value.
Quick example, I have $100,000 in my IRA, and I have $50,000 of equity in my home.
Okay.
And I owe $60,000 in taxes. Am I a candidate for an offer and compromise?
No, absolutely not. As long as you can.
But I watch these commercials and it says I can settle my tax for pennies on the dollar.
Since you have access to the IRA, they would say no. They're going to look at 70% of the IRA. So that would
the other
be
30% is what?
Is to
I
pay
get
your
to keep?
current taxes.
Oh, because I have to take the money out.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh,
so my
great.
answer there would be no. They also,
So I lose my whole IRA.
In your scenario, they would say you don't qualify.
But then I can pay my taxes.
Because you can afford to pay in full.
So Jenny, how long would you estimate it would take you from speaking or meeting with a client to even find out or make the decision, is an offer and compromise even worth further discussion? How long does it typically take?
If it's not a business client, if we're talking about a business offer and compromise, then that's a more complex computation. However, if it's an individual, I would say within that hour in a free consultation, I will tell you whether you qualify and exactly how much that amount is going to be, assuming you give me correct information. So that's why I usually tell clients to come in, bring your pay stubs or proof of your income so I can actually do the calculations.
So what this means is if I've got if I have assets, if I have an IRA, I have a 401k that I can take loans against it, or I have $100,000 of equity in my house and I only owe $50,000 or $100,000 in tax, offer and compromise is basically off the table, right?
Almost all of the time. There's a few situations where individuals are just living off that IRA and taking monthly distributions. Then we can argue those are for what they meet in the IRS allowable expenses, because we also look at the other two components, which are dissipated assets. So you can't just go spend that IRA and come back and claim for
it. Or I can't go give my cousin my Corvette.
No.
That's owned free and clear?
No, absolutely
for
not.
$100 or something like that?
So Ian, what we see, and similar to your world with abuses and whatnot, what Ken and Jenny were getting at is that we have clients come in, and Jenny can tell you, that have paid thousands of dollars of this alleged promise and paid up front, paid with credit cards, paid however they could, haven't even met with attorneys, haven't met with anybody, when really in the first 5 minutes you'd be able to tell that there's no way an offering compromise is bad.
I mean,
these people are taking their money and walking away with it and doing nothing.
I
They
had
call
a
on
client
the ad.
pay $8,000, and it was a year later, and they came to me for a second opinion because the company hadn't finalized their offer yet. My first question was, how much do you owe? The woman told me $100,000. I said, do you have a 401k? She said, yes. I said, do you have access to it? She said, yes. I said, how much is in there? She said, $350,000.
We would never put them in an offer and compromise in that case. But in this case, the person she was talking to was a commissioned salesperson on an 800 line somewhere in California. He probably got 25% of that $8,000 for the phone call. And then it's worse than nothing, because they put you into the program, and it takes a year before they come back and tell you you're denied, and then you say, what do I do now? They say, well, you got to give us another $5,000 and maybe we can get you on an installment agreement. We've already used the $8,000 for your offer and compromise. It is a scam of the worst dimension.
That is exactly like the scams that we see in the debt settlement industry, where people will get a letter in the mail saying, hey, we can settle your credit card debt at 50 cents on the dollar. We see these come in all the time, and they will require people to effectively give all of their monthly income every month for 6 months to create a fund.
And then they charge 18% on the debt. They settle at 50 to 70%, and they charge them $100 a month to hold their money. We do debt resolution, but we do it at 8.5%, and we defend them if they get sued.
And there's a commission, right, that they get paid up front first. But the problem with those, at least on our side, it's the same thing probably with you, is that when a consumer goes into that kind of a program and they're waiting for 6 months, debts that they have that are still in good standing, they go into default. So all of a sudden their interest rates get kicked up a notch, and the debts that they have that are in debt collection go to debt collection attorneys, and they get sued. And their credit ratings now, instead of being 30 or 60 days late, they've gone to charge-off status, which means their credit reports are in the tank for 7 years.
Yeah.
And
we're running out of time. It's a bad situation, and that's what we always talk about in that thing, is that's why you have to do the proper planning. You can't just go and answer the phone and make a call and believe someone on a phone call. We'll be back next week with Law and Reality.